Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Hurricane Outlook and Discussion time. It's Tuesday, the 13th of July, 2021. And even though it's mostly quiet, as the background image says there with the headline, there are a couple of areas to watch in the Atlantic. One of them kind of popping up over the last several hours down near Florida. So we'll take a look at that and more. Always something to talk about here. So I'm glad you tuned in. First of all, officially, if you will, one little X up here in the North Atlantic, way south of Newfoundland, which is right there. Very low probability of development. It's a non-tropical system, and it's, kind of trying to wind up a little bit there, and it does have some Gulf Stream water. The warm Gulf Stream waters kind of go underneath it out here, but not warm enough. There's not enough deep moisture, not enough latent heat, and other environmental factors to really get this to be purely tropical. But as they say, it could drift southward towards a little bit warmer waters, and it might be a little bit more interesting, but it's not of any concern except to shipping interests out here in the shipping lanes. I don't even know what those shipping lanes are. I've never looked it up myself because I don't usually go across the North Atlantic, but this is why the National Hurricane Center and the Tropical Analysis and Forecast Branch, they're down there in the same building with the NHC in Miami, if you didn't know that. This is why they do this. They forecast this stuff because you've got the ships on the sea, you have us that live on the land, you have planes that fly over the tops of these things, commercial airliners, and they need to know when there's very deep convection. So it's all related, and it's interesting, even if there's nothing else really to talk about. All right? But there is something else to talk about, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Here's the visible satellite loop from Tropical Tidbits. It's got a little bit of a glitch at the first part there, kind of the top portion of the lower 48, and indeed the northern hemisphere kind of cut off there, but it's back and good to go. So a couple of areas to watch. One here, Invest 96E in the Eastern Pacific. That's what the E stands for. And then another area that's going to develop down here. Both of these are going to move off to the west with time and eventually encounter cooler water, but not before potentially becoming named systems. We'll take a closer look at these in just a moment. But first, Eric Webb kind of tweeting about this with that, is right. What is it? Well, it's this interesting area down off the Florida coast there. We'll take a zoomed-in picture of it here, satellite loop. A bunch of pictures put together. Got kind of a mid-level circulation, a mesoscale convective vortex, some rotation to it, lots of thunderstorms in here with all this lightning, very heavy rain headed for portions of the northwest Bahamas, leaving that area now, but headed towards South Florida, and millions of people live down there, so heads up, this is coming through. Very, very small, probably not going to survive much longer in terms of this rotation that you start to see here, but it is interesting to see on satellite. People have picked up on it. I mean, this stuff isn't going to go undetected. It's just not. Lots of people watching. And we have a nice radar loop here. A couple of really fascinating things in this nice long loop from Mark Nissenbaum over at Florida State University. First of all, look at this squall line that comes out there, right there. That sucker races out ahead. And really interesting there. That blasted through the Keys. I bet that was quite something if you're down in the Florida Keys to have seen. Then this little feature, you might think, well, that's an eye. Well, not really. It's just a mid-level rotation in the atmosphere down there, some squally weather. It's trying, but the background state is just not favorable right now. This is too small of a system, and there's not enough atmospheric lift down there. It's fighting against a background state that's not very favorable for this to develop. So it shouldn't go much further in terms of its development chances, which, the Hurricane Center hasn't outlooked it. It's kind of fallen in between the cracks there. They issued their outlook around 2 p.m., and I'm cutting this video here almost at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. But it's interesting to see once this mess comes through the Florida Keys there, it too will bring some gusty winds, maybe even some water spouts, although any water spouts were probably in that other area of showers and thunderstorms. But you folks in South Florida, those big metropolitan areas down there, get ready. More heavy rains headed your way. This will move through and into the southeast Gulf and probably won't be anything to speak of by tomorrow. In fact, let's zoom in to the vorticity, and do we see anything in the vicinity? No, we do not. There's hardly anything there. And this is the mid-level, lower level. It's about 5,000 feet, 850 millibars. A little bit of energy here, some over Cuba, but there's nothing really there. The vorticity, or the spin in the atmosphere, is missing. It's just kind of a ruse, if you will. It's trying to get your attention like a shiny fish. You know how they say, "Oh, I saw something shiny." That's all it is. Everything else out there across the tropics today, nice and quiet. Let me go back, though, to the broader picture of that low pressure area south of Newfoundland. It's sitting down here. You might look and say, well, where is it? Kind of over here. And just barely noticeable. See, it's kind of attached to this front, larger mid-latitude storm. So let's go back to the vorticity chart, and you can see, where is it? Well, here's the big mid-latitude storm. This is the area the Hurricane Center is watching. Some low-level vorticity, bundling of the energy. But that is what you would look for down there if we were concerned about it, and it's not there. But, like I showed you, it's something, and people down there in the Keys and South Florida need to be ready for it. Squally weather, heavy rain, makes driving difficult, so forth and so on. All right, in the Eastern Pacific, as I alluded to, we have Invest Area 96E. And just to put your mind at ease, see what I did there? E with whatever. That was an accident, I promise. I think this is called Socorro Island or something like that. Cabo San Lucas is over here. And there's the Pacific coast of Mexico. And the guidance is fairly tightly clustered until about 48 hours. Then beyond that, it's like a bad wire, like one of those 5-conductor wire things like we use on our anemometers, where the end of it gets all frayed. That's what it looks like. Very much reminds me of that. That's called divergence in the tracks, but it doesn't matter. The divergence is going to be heading away from Mexico, and it's not going to have any chance to bother folks there, except maybe some ocean swells that could get generated as it develops out here, and those will radiate northward towards the Mexican coastline, the Baja and vicinity. But other than that, nothing to worry about. This is interesting, sort of in the trivia side of things. I like to see what people are talking about on Twitter and so forth. And this tweet here from Nick. Who is Nick? Well, let's just take a look. Meteorologist, Director of Research and Development. That's pretty cool. At University of Albany's Center of Excellence. All right, so Nick knows what he is talking about and posts some good information, evidently, to get a retweet here from Matthew. I might have to start following Nick. Anyhow, this stuff's neat, isn't it? The different people that know all sorts of good stuff. The internet can be a pleasant place. You just have to know who to follow. So anyway, just thinking about the fact that New York City has had 3 impactful tropical storms basically make a direct impact in the city in less than 12 months. Did you guys know that? It's true. We had Faye last year, followed by Isaias, finally said it right, and then Elsa this year. 3 of them in less than 12 months. Is this trying to tell us something? Oftentimes you get these corridors carved out in the pattern that hurricane seasons will follow 2 and 3 years in a row. It's not like the correlation of that, it would be a stretch for me to convince you, but think about it. The Carolinas in the mid-90s, we had 5 of them. You had a year off there in 1997 because of the mega El Nino. But 96, 98, 99, Eastern North Carolina was hit by 5 hurricanes, or certainly directly impacted. So last year, Faye, then Isaias, and now Elsa this year, you just have to wonder. And, that's all I'm going to say. Really interesting tweet here. These are the radar shots of those systems in various time frames there. Follow Nick if you want to learn more. I just thought that was interesting. And then the GFS. We'll take a look at this. Sorry, I thought I had something else to show you, but we'll move on to the models. Basically showing you how there's nothing really to worry about over the next several days. Remember that vorticity I showed you? There's the signature of the system south of Newfoundland, and then all kinds of energy just stretched out, very meager. There's a little reflection down there in the Straits of Florida, But let's put this into motion frame by frame, see what happens. Just a tiny reflection there down near the Florida Straits, nothing to write home about. And then that system south of Newfoundland really doesn't take shape either. And if we just move this out into time, you know, when there's nothing to show, I got no problem showing you the next 2 weeks. Tropical wave moves off there. Let me rewind it. See it? It's right there. There it is, coming off of the coast of Africa. This is a week out. And again, when there's nothing to get all worried about, it's fine to do this because people can't screen capture something and put it out there and go, big hurricane in day 12. Anyway, it's fun when you can do this when it's quiet, put it that way. But yeah, you see the pattern over the next 2 weeks in the GFS, if this will load. There we go. Nothing out there to speak of. You can see the atmosphere in motion, and there's just nothing down there. Part of the convectively coupled Kelvin wave suppressed phase, the MJO not favorable, so forth and so on, Saharan air layer, and the fact that it's July. Climatologically speaking, it's supposed to be a quiet month. So in the Eastern Pacific, couple of areas to watch. There's 96E, more energy trying to congeal to its east. We'll put this into motion. Watch what happens. That one develops small. And then the other one finally takes shape and eventually gets going. Both of them move off to the west. This is a week out. Rewind the clock. I'll show you how that evolves. Small system there. You usually don't see these small systems in the Pacific. So interesting to see that the Pacific is just not that fertile this year. And that might mean a busy Atlantic. Usually when the Pacific is just not doing much, the Atlantic takes over. So as you can see, for you guys down in Mexico, any of the resorts down there, no worries, maybe some swells coming in. And that's about it. Hey, something from me on Twitter. The monsoon yesterday, active over in Nevada. We have a nest cam permanently stationed in Pahrump outside of Las Vegas. Las Vegas would be on the other side of these mountains over here. Those are the Spring Mountains. Look at that. Big anvil. This is the monsoon in action. It was in the mid-1-teens yesterday at Pahrump, like 112, 114, something like that. Whew, toasty. Get a lot of rising motion, moisture out there coming up from the North American monsoon. And voila, you get these big thunderstorms. There's another set erupting over the Spring Mountains. And watch, you'll see a nice rain shaft and even a little bit of a rainbow there. Not real high definition, this camera. Plus it gets compressed on the Twitter. And then another thunderstorm complex developing as the sun was going down. Really neat to see the atmosphere in motion. This is part of our camera network that we have from our supporters and our friends all across North America. And that network is growing thanks to our crowdfunding through Patreon. If you're ever interested in that, the link is in the description of the video, patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. So speaking of the monsoon, I should be heading out to Arizona on August 1st, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully the monsoon will hang around between now and then, and maybe even amplify some. You definitely need the moisture out there. And there's a big story to tell. The drought, Lake Mead is very, very low. The Colorado River suffering. So even if the monsoon dries up, which really I hope it does not, for lots of reasons, there's a lot to tell about what's going on out there. The extreme heat that they've had this year, the burn scars from last year's fires, very interesting weather, and my interest in the desert Southwest. When we do eventually get a tropical cyclone, the leftovers that goes up into the desert Southwest, that becomes really interesting to me because it speeds up geologic time. You get flash flooding, these arroyos or these dry washes become filled with water, and it's just an amazing thing to see, and I like to study that as part of the, I mean, it's kind of like taking what I enjoy about the science and just the enigma of what hurricanes represent. We don't like the death and destruction. Nobody does. And if you do, you know, sorry, what can I say? But it's the science part of it that's really fascinating. And when you take that and superimpose it on the desert Southwest, where it's supposed to be arid, and there's saguaro cactus out there, right? And Las Vegas and Phoenix and Tucson, and boom, now the dew points are in the 70s, and you have an ex-tropical cyclone moving in. Yes, that's interesting to me, and we'll wait and see. So when I go out there in August, I'll kind of scope some stuff out, visit some people that are in the know about when such things happen, where we might want to set up equipment to monitor that in the future. It's all part of the plan, making sure we stay aware and follow our interest in weather. All right, that is it from me for today. No, it's not. I got one more thing I forgot. My morning podcast, I try to do them in the morning. When things are quiet, I might sleep in and do it in the early afternoon or just around noon or whatever. But every day, I think I've only missed 2 days. I was just busy or forgot or something. But since May 15th, I've been real close to perfect here. Only missed a couple days. It's called Hurricane Season, the podcast, and it's an audio, very, very short digest of what I'm looking at in the tropics. And it's growing. We've got a few hundred people tuning in. I appreciate that. Imagine going and talking to a room full of a few hundred people. It'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? You don't have to have millions to make you feel appreciated. And I'm just appreciative of what I do have. And you are part of it. So Hurricane Season, the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, search for that, follow along, and every day I'll give you a sneak peek of what I'm looking at across the tropics. And for now, mostly quiet. Have a good rest of your mostly quiet Tuesday wherever you are. Thanks as always for watching. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. We'll do it all again tomorrow.